There is so much strength, so much talent, so many resources among the poor. They have to have those resources because they wouldn't survive in the conditions where they live otherwise. In a slum in Kenya, there is nobody who knows it better than the people themselves. What they need is a chance, and they need somebody who is the bravest, who starts climbing first, make use of that ladder, that is microfinance, and start planting the dream in the others.
When my grandmother was a very young woman, my grandfather died, leaving 10 children and not much to support them. So after he died, my grandmother had the advice of the parish priest and 2 merchants and a small loan, and she was able to put together a grocery business and a grocery store which kept the family together for 2 and 3 generations after that. Her strength and the small loan and the business advice of these men made all the difference in her life. I grew up intrigued with Africa, and in 2003, 2004 I spent almost a year traveling through Africa. The thrill was meeting the women, the men, and the children. Every night we would camp out. We sat around a campfire, and I would listen to the women's stories about their children and what they dreamt about. And through reflection, I realized that it was in the women, the African women around the campfire, that I met my grandmother. And I was at lunch one day and realized the lunch that I was eating, the cost of that lunch would be the same cost as a small business loan in Africa. And that could make the difference in their life. The small loan, the strong women of Africa put those together, and the same thing that happened to my grandmother, what happened for them. And I thought to myself, I think we can do this. I think we can make these small loans happen. What I didn't know is exactly how to do it. My experience of Jamii Bora and the women and the men in this program gave me the idea of the model that we would like to carry forward. Jamii Bora is about working with the strongest of the strong and helping them with small loans.
I came into microfinance from the housing end, from the desperation of the slums, of the street dwellers, the beggars who had not even got a shack in the slum to live in. And I said there must be a way. There must be a way for us to change that. Jamii Bora means good families. We started with 50 women in the streets who refused to accept that their dream was gone. That dream of getting out of poverty, they were refusing to give up on that. And they became ambassadors, our mentors, our promoters, and our staff. So many of them are social workers with us. Some have become managers, some are loans officers, and they are out explaining to others, you can also make it. If I could make it, you can also make it.
When Tony first found out about Jamii Bora, we thought that we probably had found something that would work for microfinancing partners in Africa and the role that we would play in the projects that we wanted to take on in Africa. It was clear that we did not have the kind of infrastructure and knowledge to build that organization from the ground up ourselves. The program that they offer is so comprehensive in giving each individual that becomes a member of their microfinancing project the kind of support that they need, both professionally and personally, to be successful in the program and to be able to pay back the loans. So they offer a whole litany of services, from life insurance to health insurance, AIDS awareness. They have an orphanage, and they provide addiction education, mental health counseling. Ultimate goal that that individual is given the kind of support, even in business training, that they need to pay back that loan. That's why it works.
The social workers in Jamii Bora, they get their PhD from the streets. So they go with the people that were next to them on the streets and say, you know, I got a loan at Jamii Bora, I changed my life, I changed my family's life, and I'd like to help you.
We are visiting former street mothers we are trying to follow them up. So our work with my social workers at the end of the day is to try to still give them hope. No one comes out of poverty because of charity. So I tell the people in the slums that they should do something on their own. They should not wait to be given, because whatever someone sweats for, she or he can use it wisely. And that is my teaching every day with my co-workers as I go to the streets. I came to Nairobi in 1987 after we separated with my husband. We had some differences, a lot of fighting. I had wanted to trace back my job. I had lost a job as a teacher. In the fracas when we fought, I lost my certificates and everything. And it happened that I ended up now desperate. I didn't know where to go. I went and stayed with a relative for some times who could not really support me enough with my 6 children. And that is when I came to know Vingri. And Jamii Bora, I happened to be among the first women who were given houses. And that is when I settled, my children went to school. We continued doing some small jobs that Ingrid taught us. Among those jobs we learned was weaving baskets. We started also weaving mats. How we started, we were a women club, but today we have grown into a microfinance. With Jamii Bora, we are a unique microfinance because the type of members we are reaching, other microfinances might not be able to give them loans because they have no security at all.
Who would have thought that it was possible to start with a group of 50 beggars and create one of the biggest microfinance organizations in Africa?
So I have seen my vision accomplished as a teacher because I am still teaching my staff, my social workers, and also teaching our members how to make them uplift themselves and come out of poverty.
Mathare is one of the largest slums in Kenya, and of course there is a lot of poverty. That is where I was born, brought up, and up to today I'm living there. As a result of that poverty life, there come a time even 3 meals a day became impossible. So that is when I walked out of my mother's house. I met people who are thieves, thugs. I joined those groups. We started stealing people, hanging men's neck, snatching women's handbags, snatching men's watches. Most of my colleagues were shot dead, and I must thank God. Today I am alive. When I came to meet Jamii Bora, that is 7 years ago, I was desperate, total desperate. Somebody who had no house, who had nothing. And from there I was taught a lot how it is good to save. The policy of Jamii Bora is you must save with them, then you get loan. So it was very, very difficult, and you can imagine my only means of getting money was by stealing. And of course I wanted to stop that habit. So I ended up doing another job, but since I was determined to be a member of Jamii Bora, I started saving 50 shillings every week. In one full year, I realized I had saved 1,000 shillings. It took me a long time to cope with this life of saving. This was just a very, very new culture to me. My first loan, I went to my mother and told my mother, Mom, I have been given this money by Jamii Bora in form of a loan, and they have assured me if I pay back the money, they will give us more and more. We started agreeing vegetable business with my mother. So the business was so good, and in 6 months I had paid back the 2,000 shillings. A man who had nothing in his disposal. Today I have borrowed 17 loans with Jamii Bora, and I have 3 businesses.
When women in the streets, when she starts realizing that I can actually start a little business myself, she now starts a little tomato business. She has a few kilos to sell, and she sells one price for a big potato, one for a small one. Now the day she has earned money, so she saved $5 and she can borrow $10. That's the day her life changes. Those $10 will help her buy a whole sack of potatoes. Now she's bought the potatoes at wholesale price. So she earns more for every potato she sells, and she has so many more to sell. Now she can stop sitting on the pavement with her potatoes. She can afford a little table and a plastic sheet over on some poles, and she has her own shop, you see. And she starts selling now much more. She saves more, and she can pay back that loan often in just maybe 8 weeks.
Before in the slums it was very difficult for people to do savings. We need to train our community. We need to show them the future. And that is why I always tell them tomorrow's success begins today. So our people, they are able to save, they get loans, and they educate their kids.
The goals of microfinancing partners in Africa is to find out where microfinancing is happening in Africa and to spread it as much as we can. Using the gift of Jamii Bora, which is the model, we can have pilot programs where we can help people from different countries in Africa study with Jamii Bora and take the program, thus making microfinancing a part of their culture, a part of their existence.
It can work. Jamii Bora model can work in the whole of Africa, because as I see, if it has worked in Burundi, also outside Kenya, it can work even in other parts of the world. So long as we have partners who are really interested to make this dream come true.
When you talk about poverty and you see the poor in African countries, it's important to remember how the United States was built up. It was built up by the poorest of the poor in Europe. And they built the richest country in the world.
My relatives all ended up in Kansas in the late 1800s, got off a railroad train, built sod houses, lived in sod houses until they'd farm for a few years, then built wooden houses, bought more land, ultimately, had larger farms. Kenya, Africa, the people are very much like we were back then. You have to work for yourself, not for an employer. I think the microfinancing appeals to me because it's giving people an opportunity to better themselves and get out of poverty.
Always I've been telling my co-workers, my family, that not even the sky is the limit. We just want to go beyond that.
Through my mom, I learned about my grandmother. Through the women in Africa, I learned about strength, and I met my grandmother in them. Through the microfinancing process, we found that there's a way to make these small loans happen. And then through Jamii Bora, we got a model, and now through microfinancing partners in Africa, we have a way to make this dream happen.
$30, which is 2,000 Kenya shillings, can help a family in Kenya to come out of poverty. And I advise our friends in the US that in as much as they can feel sorry for us, we are not really so much to have them feel sorry for us, but we would like them to invest in us. To invest in us. Yeah, thank you.